for no good reason. I should probably
Hmm.
move it.
Yeah, isn't that supposed to clamp to the desk?
So it is screwed to a. This is a ghetto ass thing that I've done. I had a shooting. I don't know what do you call them. What do you call those? Like a lead sled,
Yeah.
like to shoot off of. I have it screwed to that,
Oh, and it's sitting on a chair.
but it's sitting. Actually, it's sitting on a footstool,
Oh,
and it likes to fall over. Let's see if I move it
um,
right.
I
Oh,
I
that's
just finished.
better.
I finished the book I was reading today, and it
Hmm.
was it was it was so good. I haven't had a book like this that I read so fast.
Which one was this one?
So this one, the author is called Megan Talley. It was her debut novel. It's called That's Not My Name.
Okay.
Um, and it was good. I mean, I haven't had a page turner like that where I like I read it in like 4 sittings, like the 300-page book. It was so good. Such a fast read, page turner. And then I was like, oh, I want to find another book by her. And I found that was her debut novel. And she has a new one that came out this year. So I went to order that one. I did order
Megan
it because
Lally or Megan Talley?
Megan Talley. I'm sorry, Megan Talley.
Are you sure? No, I think it's Megan Lally.
Megan Lally. That's what I meant. Yep, Megan Lally.
It says this is an audiobook where some of the situations you might find are dating and sex and difficult situations.
Yeah. So
Can
here's the
I?
thing. So go ahead, Zach.
I just want to put. It's not really a peeve. It's something that is weird to me. I think it's weird when people say that the person is called and then say their name
Oh,
instead
that's
of
a
like
British thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
no. Well, you didn't. Bob did it, but I hear it a lot where they're like, oh, they're called. They're called Bob. They're
It's
called
because
Janet. I'm like,
I'm
the
part
fucking
British.
name is.
Yeah, they name is. So anyway, I went to order her other book and I was like reading the reviews. I was like, I hope it's the same like type of format as this one. It's like changing perspective, short chapter, which I love, but it was just so fast paced. Everything was so good. And then the twist at the end was nuts. Did not see it coming. Um, and then it's like all the reviews were like, it's good, it's a great teen novel, whatever. I'm like, teen not what? And then I like went to her author page and her bio, and like she writes young adult books for young adults. I'm like, I just read a teen novel, the best book I've read this year, and it was made for teenagers.
Yeah, don't turn your nose up. Some of the YA stuff is the best stuff out there, my
Well,
opinion.
that was the thing. So then I was gonna not order it because people were saying like, "Oh, this one is definitely made for like teenagers," which I don't get how the other one. I mean, there was teenagers were like the main characters, the protagonists. All the important characters were teenagers, but it wasn't like Nancy Drew or something. Like it was very adult content, I thought. Um, so then I was like, but they were like, this one's even more so for teens. I'm like, oh, that sucks. So I didn't order it, and then I just finished this one. I'm like, you know what? So what if it's for teens? I'm
For
reading it
sure.
because this
Absolutely.
story, yeah. So here's my book recommendation for the week for you all. If you want something you could read, and by the way, I found it because I'm in Becky, as she likes to refer to it, Becky's mystery thriller, or psychological thriller Facebook group. Somebody had posted it and they're like, oh my God, I read this book in one night. And then like all the comments underneath it were like, me too. It was amazing. I read it so fast. It was so good. So that's where I found it. So they're all reading teen books. So why can't I?
See, you
But my book,
absolutely can.
yeah. So my book recommendation for today is That's Not My Name by Megan Lally. Correct?
Megan Lally. I have a song recommendation to spin off your book recommendation. That song recommendation is that old song by the Ting Tings that goes, they call me Hey, they call me Stacy, they call me Her, they call me Jane. That's not my name. That's not my name.
Oh,
That's not my name. That's not my name.
Keep going.
They call me Quiet Girl, but I'm a
Yep. The
riot.
whole
Mary
song.
Jo Lisa, always the same. That's
Please
not
do the
my
whole
name.
song.
how do you know
Not
all
my name.
like?
I pulled it up.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't
I
know
was like,
those lyrics. I
how
was reading.
in the hell? I have a book recommendation. The
Wait,
monster at the end of this book.
It's Grover.
It's Grover.
it's Grover.
I spelled it.
It's Grover.
I just Liz, what a quinky dink. Liz said she just got that. I'm assuming when she says that one, she's talking about one I was just talking about at her local library in Royal Oak, Michigan.
I think she said just got that last one at my library. Just meow. She
Just
just
meow.
got it. Just meow.
Right meow. Okay, let's is she related to Adam Lally? No idea. All I know is she writes teeny bopper novels, and it was that's about my maturity level because I thought it was great.
Bopper.
Uh Okay, we're gonna end this pregame, guys. Sorry, it's a little short today. As I mentioned, I'm under the weather and trying to preserve my voice for the important stuff we're about to do here. So we'll talk to you guys. Actually, not next week, in 2 weeks, because we
Yeah,
have our
happy
Thanksgiving break
Turkey
coming
Day.
up. Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye.
You gonna say something, dummy?
I said bye.
You did not.
I
She
said
did.
happy
She
Turkey
did.
Day.
She did
That
say
counts
Happy
as
Turkey
bye.
Day. You gonna say something, dummy? That was mean.
Yeah.
Can't breathe.
Why did this turn off?
All right, you get to clap this week, Zach. Isn't that fun?
I got the clap
we
this
did.
week.
They call me
Well,
They call me Stacy.
Okay,
that was my favorite part of my whole night, Janet.
I'm ready to clap.
All right, let's all hit record.
Did it?
Almost didn't, but did.
Oh
We're
no!
rolling. We're all rolling.
Oh no!
Rolling,
Hold on.
rolling.
Uh-oh.
Not good.
Not
good.
Are you out of battery, Zach?
Shh. No. Yes.
Oh no.
No memento. Sorry, guys.
Let's hit stop on our
Oh,
recording,
no.
Janet. Let's
Okay.
go ahead and stop on that.
Alrighty.
Yeah, well, let's stop on that. Why Zach goes to get
Listen, I can still hear you guys.
battery. Oh shit.
Good point. Good point. Good point. Good point.
I need double A's there, Weaver. Top of the refrigerator. Perfect.
I wonder
shit,
how
she got
long we'll
arsenal.
be able to hear him.
I mean, can you hear me now?
Yeah. we hear
Are you?
Oh.
How can we
Those
hear you so
AirPods.
well?
He's wearing AirPods or his Beats or whatever they are.
Oh, that's
I'm
right.
magic.
He's not going into his microphone. I always forget that.
Yeah, yeah.
Here we go.
Here, Zach sounds like
Luckily,
he's
my
got
wife has got a
my batteries
hoard
in
of
hand.
batteries. Here we go. I'll just take.
Back up.
Oh, that's so far.
It's gonna be out of breath for a minute.
There he is. There he is.
Sorry about that. So my kids go through batteries in their wireless video game controllers, like it's nothing. So my wife has got like an arsenal of them
Oh,
stashed, like hidden, so they can't have them, but we have them.
I buy the big giant packs of double A's at Costco.
We don't go to Costco.
I did find your wild chips there, JV. And I almost bought them,
yeah?
but then
Well,
yeah,
then you but you already had dismissed them. You sniffed at them once you saw.
and
that
I
they
looked
weren't
again. I was like, and
proteiny.
they had the Nashville hot flavor, and I thought that sounds
Yeah.
good. Like these
Okay.
are good. But then I looked and I was like, no, the calorie for protein ratio
Yeah.
just wasn't there for me.
Yep, I hear you.
Are we ready to hit record
It's
now?
for the best, because if you had the chicken and waffles, you wouldn't care anymore, and I don't want to encourage
Ooh,
you. To
I like
break
some
your-
chicken and waffles.
Man,
God,
that's
do I
the
like
real.
chicken and
That's such a
waffles.
good flavor. It's such a good flavor. Okay.
I'm rolling.
I'm also rolling.
Me too. I think.
Sure, this time.
Are you?
Wait, I just stopped it. Now I am. For real. For realio.
Great.
1, 2, 3.
Ahoy, friends. Thank you for tuning into Truth and Justice. You are listening to the Friday follow-up for Season 17, Episode 18, Blood is Thicker Than Water. This week we heard a little bit. Nope. This week we heard about... God damn it. I wrote that wrong. This week we heard about the little bit of forensic evidence from the ball field crime scene. We also heard some extremely disturbing findings about possible leads that the state deemed insignificant. This episode had a classic Bob. Man, I'm falling apart, Bob.
You're probably out of breath from the whole down.
You
the
got
stairs
his
thing.
brain fog. It's contagious.
I know. This episode had a classic Bob Ruff mic drop and raised a lot of questions. Today I'm joined by Bob and Janet, and the three of us are here to dive into all your listener questions and theories. But before we get started, I will put a trigger warning about today's follow-up due to the graphic nature of this week's main episode and discussions about sexual assault. But before we get into that, I do know we have a little housekeeping.
Yeah, a few things. One, we need our Erica, or not Erica 1, not Erica with a K. Our other Erica, who leads our transcription team, reached out to me and said they've had a couple of their transcribers that have kind of moved on to other things, and so they're looking for a couple people to help transcribe episodes. So if you're interested in doing that, shoot an email to theories@truthandjusticepod.com, and I'll pass them on to Erica. And just, it does take up some time. We do use Otter AI to help automate the transcribing process. So most of what the transcribers do is they take that file and then they go through it, proofread it, edit it, and then put it into the format to go onto our website. So if you're interested in helping with the transcription, go ahead and reach out. I'll pass that information along to Erica. I was supposed to tell you guys that last week, and I forgot, but I remembered this week. Other housekeeping, schedule wise, I mentioned to you guys that we've got a break coming up for Thanksgiving. That is coming up. So this is the way things are going to shake out. We do have an episode this Sunday. I just didn't want to, I was going to wait and just take the week off now and do a whole main and follow up after Thanksgiving. But I just didn't want this one to wait as we're starting to get into these new leads. There's just so much more information that I want to keep going with it. So this Sunday, there will be a main episode, but then the follow-up for that episode will not be until not that coming Friday, but the Friday after that. So we're going to have a full week off after that. So there'll be no main or follow-up during the week of Thanksgiving. So everybody do your Black Friday shopping, enjoy time with your family, whatever you do for Thanksgiving. But make sure you tune in this Sunday. And then as far as scheduling goes too, moving forward, at least for the foreseeable future, we're going to start recording our follow-ups on Monday evenings instead of Wednesday evenings. Wednesdays have been tough. We've got all kinds of scheduling conflicts between the three of us and Erica. And Zach's got some more conflicts coming up on Tuesdays with his kids. So we decided to go ahead and move it to Mondays. So this is what I'm going to need you guys to do. I'm going to do my absolute best to remember on Sunday mornings, as soon as the episodes drop, to go ahead and publish the follow-up post. But you'll need to get your questions in, pretty quick on Sunday and Monday, so that we can have the follow-up prepared for Monday nights. Now, as far as when you listen to the follow-up, it's not going to change anything. They'll still drop on Wednesdays. But we do have a pretty big group that like to join in on the YouTube live streams. And for those people, you guys are both pointing out, did I say something wrong?
You said the follow-ups drop on Wednesdays, but that's the pre-show. The follow-ups drop on Fridays.
Yes, correct. Sorry. Yeah. So for those of you that just listening to it, they will still drop on Fridays. But for those of you that like to join in on the live stream and on YouTube and be in the chat during that, that's who it's going to affect. Those recordings are going to be done now on Monday evenings, at least for a while. So just wanted you guys to know that. Also, I had a few people ask about updates for the case that my students did on the Underestimated podcast. So just real briefly, I'm not going to go too deeply into this because we got a million other questions going on. And to be honest with you, I'm very sick and I don't know how long my voice is going to last. But in the Underestimated podcast, one of the cases that my students covered was the Skelton brothers case. If you're not familiar with that case, you can always check it out on Underestimated. But essentially, 3 boys disappeared in 2010. It was suspected that their father had killed them and concealed the body somewhere. He ended up getting convicted of murder, or excuse me, getting convicted of kidnapping, and was due to be released for that. They didn't have bodies and they didn't have the boys declared dead, so they couldn't charge him with murder. He was due to be released this week. And during the Underestimated season, they were talking to the boy's mother, and she was in the process of going through court proceedings to have the boys declared dead. That actually happened in real time while the students were covering the case. I think they even had some audio from the courtroom with the judge, declaring them deceased. And since that was done this past week, right before John Skelton was scheduled to be released on the kidnapping charges, they have now charged him with the murder of his 3 sons. So that case is ongoing. We'll give you updates on that when it comes to the students. The group that did that case on Underestimated have all graduated. So I don't know if we'll do anything else on the Underestimated feed, but one way or another, it's a very tragic and sad case. And I'm glad that at least something's being done about it. And supposedly there's some new evidence going to be coming out. So when that happens, we will touch on that along the way. With that being said, I think that is all we have for housekeeping. I know we've got, Janet said she got like 2 pages of questions about this episode. The reactions we got from everybody were pretty stunned. So first things first, I'll go for you guys. What did you guys, because I don't believe I had really shared, at least not the full details of what came out this weekend with either one of you prior to the episode dropping. So what'd you guys come away with?
JP, if you want to go first.
Sure. Well, no, you said it in the intro, Zach. It was a classic Bob Ruff mic drop moment. And it's funny. I actually don't think I do have it in here because we had so many questions that I had to cut out more of the kind of comments that came through. But there were some really salient comments, and of course, yes, lots of oh my God, wow reactions on the Facebook post as well. But one listener definitely said, for people who can never accept that there would ever be a reason for police to not just do a bad job, but to actively kind of sabotage the investigation of a case. That listener, posted like, well, can't wait to see how you do your gymnastics around this one, because it seems like a pretty solid reason to tinker with evidence, etc., and avoid looking at things that you don't want to see. And that was something that really came up for me as well when I was listening to it. It was like, wow, this is, if this turns out to have nothing to do with why Chris Bynum is in prison, that's extraordinary, because sometimes we have these cases where we can look and see what happened and kind of go, well, you have to go from A to B, and then B leads you to C, and then C leads C, and it turns out once you get to F, you figure out, that's where this thing happened. And when you hear something like the bomb that you dropped in this episode, it's like, well, that just sounds like A to B. You know what I mean? Like, it just could be as simple as like, oh, well, that's a huge problem. So, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously the DNA wasn't tested then, but and we don't know what was known, but it's certainly not a good look.
Right.
That we, for the months we spent investigating the investigation, to find that they put no effort into figuring out who actually did this. And then you find out that one of the active Gary Kopp's kids was with, I think we can without question say, was with these victims that night, and whether they were responsible for the murder or not. We don't know that the officers knew that, if that had come up. I'm not pretending we know that, but it's just, when you're searching for a reason why, because that's the biggest question that continues to come up, is why would they not just investigate this? And then you find this out, it's like, well, like you said, Janet, like, seems like that might have been a good reason why for them.
Yeah. Zach, what do you think?
So I want to I have a ton of thoughts on the big bombshell at the end of the episode, but I don't know that we have a ton of questions about the fingerprints or the DNA, any of that stuff. So I want to talk about that really quick.
We do, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't. We'll if we address some of that stuff with you, that's
Okay.
totally cool.
So the whole idea that there were fingerprints on that car, but they never talk about location, is really bothersome.
Yeah.
Because two things, that could be a huge lead in this case, depending on where those fingerprints are. Now, if there's someplace important on the door handle, on the steering wheel, someplace important, it could be huge, but also it could be insignificant if it's like the gas door. You know what I mean? Like, and they don't have any idea of where they don't list where they came from, which is really bothersome to me.
Well, and in that regard too, it's there's a lot of questions, and there's one that late one that I sent to Janet about the DNA we'll talk about later. Where, it doesn't say where it is, but there's some assumptions that we can make. So oftentimes in a car, it's difficult to get a good latent print. Like, people from watching TV think it's just, there's, anytime somebody touches something, there's just prints all over the place. You can find prints. It's actually very difficult to find a usable latent print, because it has to be clean. It has to be in a surface that was able to, hold the oils in the print pattern. And it can't be on a place that gets a lot of traffic, for lack of a better term, right? So, like, say the doorknob. Well, if you have, people constantly opening the door handle for the car, you're not going to get a good latent print off it usually, because they'll all be overlapped on top of each other, and it just gets all jumbled together. So it's, you can assume, I assume, that the prints were in a place that was more inconspicuous than that. That they weren't somewhere just like on a doorknob or on a steering wheel, where you're going to have a million prints, probably the people that own the car, the people that drive the car regularly. They would be in somewhere more inconspicuous, I would think. Which probably, it could be nothing, or it could be more indicative of the prints being connected to the case. But it's also why you compare them to people. You put them in APIS. You find, like I said, we went through the list of, like, okay, so it's not the victims and it's not Chris. Well, Chris's statement, if you believe that, and they pretend to, said that AMP was there. Are they AMPs? Did you check that? They didn't. Right. And then it's like, well, the car actually belonged to Tom. Are they Tom's? Did you check that? You didn't. And it's just like, Is it just an avoidance of bad evidence, where it's like, because if we find out it's not Amp's and it's not Tom's, then we can't go to trial and be like, which they didn't even bring it up at trial, but you can't go to trial and say, well, it could be the guy who owns the car if you know it wasn't. So it's like, as soon as they knew it wasn't going to help their case, they didn't want anything else more to do with it. Same with the rape kits.
But I still feel like you could talk it away if if it doesn't belong to Chris. I feel like you could still talk it away as, oh, that could have been Tom's friend that got into the car the other day. I mean,
right.
I feel like the only way that it was really going to be significant in the state's case is to say it was Chris. But
right.
I still think you should put it through APHIS to see if it has any hits.
Oh yeah, I mean, if they're honestly and legitimately trying to solve the case, you find out who it belongs to. You shouldn't have. We shouldn't be talking about this 25 years later, wondering. That's so you can find out, like, it was this person. Who's this person? You go track them down. Like, oh, that's Tom's friend. Or you run it through APHIS and it comes up to some other person. Whoever it is. Maybe it comes back. What if it comes back to Shaky or Terrell or whoever? You should know the answer to that, but that requires you to actually be looking for the answer, and they were not.
Well, that's something that Melinda asked. She said if Chris had his fingerprints compared, surely his defense lawyer was aware of the fingerprint evidence collected. Why did his lawyer not demand that the fingerprints be run against APHIS, or did his lawyer not know anything about the fingerprints?
I would assume he did know. That's an assumption. And part of that is because I'm finding out that Indiana has some pretty restrictive FOIA laws compared to most states. Like it is difficult to get, like, they can come up with any excuse to give you nothing. Even like defense attorneys during an appeal, can be denied the investigative files on a case, which is insane.
What?
That's insane.
Yeah, it's nuts. So I don't know exactly what he was aware of, but it also seems that he wasn't really putting much effort into the case. His entire defense revolved around trying to undo Larry's statement. That was it. He used Moxley and Larry. That was the entire case in chief for the defense.
Yeah. Zach, did you have other stuff you wanted to go over with the DNA?
No, I think we could probably just get into stuff.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll start with Richard. Richard says, okay, big question here. Were the DNA from the kits ever compared to each other in order to see if they were related?
Yes, they are. There's multiple between the majors and the minors. They all came from different people that we know.
Okay. Laura says, did I hear this right? DNA found on the doorknob at the second murder matched DNA at the ballpark crime scene?
Yeah.
But does not, I'm letting you answer in bits and pieces, sorry, but does not match the DNA of man convicted of the murder. So please clarify what we think it means for us dense people in the back. So if you don't mind Laura's words, Laura, I don't think you're dense, but it would be good to maybe just go over that one more time, since it is such a complex set of crime scenes.
Yeah, so you have to kind of take it in chunks. Like, so I tried to break this down in the episode. So the first chunk is, what do we know? What we know is that someone who had sex with Sheila Barty, most likely on the night she was killed, also touched that doorknob at that home invasion scene and left their DNA there. So that's all we know. Now, was the person who touched the doorknob, was that connected to the murder? Because it get complicated in the fact that a single person was convicted for that murder, and apparently that's not his DNA. It's someone else's. So it was entered into CODIS as crime scene evidence. His DNA is also in CODIS, and it doesn't come back. And the hit didn't come back to Leon Frevel, I think was his name. Mm-hmm. Didn't come back to him. It came back to the doorknob. So that could mean, and this was a drug-related home invasion murder scene. Mm-hmm. So kind of similar circumstances in the fact that there was obviously drug use happening at Amp and Suzanne's house during the commission of this murder with a gun. That one was also with a gun. They're not dissimilar in the two. And so you have you have DNA that is connected to both of those crime scenes. Is it possible that the person that left the DNA on the doorknob was completely unrelated to the actual murder in the 2010 home invasion? It is possible. But also, and this is, I'm jumping ahead to that question I gave you earlier. Christina had asked, she was surprised. Essentially, Christina was surprised, and Christina is an attorney, by the way. She's an innocence attorney.
Mhm.
That the DNA from the doorknob was put into CODIS, because there's a set of factors there. You can't just swab every surface on a crime scene and just start throwing stuff into CODIS if it's not definitely related to the crime, because then you're just putting, the DNA. There's privacy protections there for just
Mhm.
individuals putting into CODIS, and so that's kind of what we were talking about earlier, Zach, with the fingerprints. There's some assumptions that can be made. I do not think that what that DNA in that doorknob was just a random swab of the doorknob. I don't
Okay.
think it was. I don't think, because Christina is absolutely right.
Mhm.
I don't think they would just randomly swab a doorknob and throw the DNA into CODIS. So what that tells me is most likely, and by the way, I'm working on trying to get FOIAs through to try to get more information on that case, so we can answer
Yes.
some of these questions. But what that tells me is it was more than likely something like blood on the doorknob,
Mhm.
something like that. That to me, that would constitute, if you have a bloody murder scene and you have blood on the doorknob and you compare it to the victim and it's not theirs, then then that would constitute getting it run through CODIS. So again, that's I'm speculating, but I think it's a fair speculation, because of those exact privacy restrictions that Christina was talking about.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, okay, let's go to Ken. Ken says, and thank you, by the way, for that content advisory in the intro as well, Zach. This can be uncomfortable and tough to talk about. Ken says, going to try to frame this as sensitively as possible. I recall at least one of the ball field victims had recently eaten something. Is this the same victim whose oral swab was positive? If so, it would seem to me that strongly suggests the oral sex happened after the food was consumed, which might help narrow the timeline. As I recall, the food was eaten an hour or two before death.
Yeah, unfortunately, no. It was Sheila Barty whose stomach contents indicate that she had recently eaten, like within probably an hour or two of death. There was no indication that Liz had eaten, and Liz is the one that had the Joseph Tidwell match to the oral swab. That being said, though, there is if you do a quick Google search or something, or AI search, or however you search for how long male DNA could be detected after oral sex, for DNA, you'll find all kinds of things. You'll find, certain instances where it was discovered, it was detected a day later, 12 hours later, 6 hours, all these different things. But you have to dig a little deeper to see that detectable is not the same as finding enough volume to get a full profile that is developed enough to go into CODIS. So we've had other cases where, like, we have good DNA, but it can't be put into CODIS. You have to have so many markers. I don't know, it's either like 23 markers, or however. You have to have a large volume of DNA to get a full enough profile to be put into CODIS. And if you factor that in, I wasn't able to find any like concrete studies, but essentially what I came up with in my research was that it was probably within an hour or two of death, depending on factors. So this person, our listener here that asked that question, like eating, like had they eaten, you can almost guarantee it was after they ate.
Hmm.
Eating, chewing gum, smoking cigarettes, spitting, all these different factors, because your mouth is constantly salivating, it's constantly rinsing itself out, and it's either getting swallowed or spit out, or whatever's going on. So DNA like that and that kind of quantity doesn't stay in the mouth for very long in a living victim. So again, I don't have the the electropherograms and to know what like the volume was, but it was enough of volume of a sample that they were able to develop a full enough profile that they were able to put into CODIS and get a match. So that is indicative to me that this happened very recently before death.
Okay. Charla says, I might be misremembering, but if the Ballfield murders occurred first and were not premeditated, what is the theory? And we've talked about this a little bit, but let's circle back on it. What is the theory for why the men would then go kill everyone at the home? We would need to connect the dots between one or both men from the DNA to the home victims, Amp and the Wallace sisters. What progress has been made on that since 2017? I think the timeframes for DNA collection, both from oral and vaginal swabs, allow for the sexual activity to have been consensual and or unconnected to the murder. Thinking of Rodney Reed and the 24-hour mistake the expert witness made in that case. There's so many variables.
There are definitely a lot of variables. As far as the connection goes, the only thing that has ever made sense to me is that whoever killed Liz and Sheila at the ball field had, prior to that, stopped by the house with Amp and Suzanne and Angela prior to going to the ball field. The only thing that makes sense to me is that it was getting rid of witnesses. You know, they have 3 people that know that they were going somewhere with these two girls, and then they're going to be found dead very soon, and they're going to be the prime suspect. So that's the thing that makes the most sense to me. The problem in this case, is with many cases, is you have a lot of people that are kind of changing their stories, lying, you know, whether it be through coercion by the police or the prosecution, to try to point the finger towards Chris Bynum. But if we take Willie's statement and take his original statement and what Larry said about the phone call from Amp to Willie, there was a connection there, because in that original statement, he mentioned an interaction happening with Amp and some Chris, perhaps, that was also involved Liz. That Liz was there. I think there was something said to the extent of he heard Suzanne or Angela or somebody in the background saying, "You better get that bee out of here," or or something like that, which would indicate that she was there. Now, the tricky part is, and we always try not to do this, to like cherry pick. Well, that part we don't want to do what the prosecution does, right? And be like, well, that part fits our narrative, so we're going to keep that and throw out the rest. But there's you can study the evolution of the statements and see what's consistent and what's not. You know, if you go to the original statement where he says, "Oh yeah, there was some kind of discussion with Chris Bynum's girlfriend days before that, or with Chris days before that," and then by trial, it's, "Oh, that happened earlier, you know, a couple hours before the murder," when we know that Chris was actually at the VFW at that time. You know, that there was a shift to make Chris into Chris Bynum. Originally it was Chris, then it became Chris Bynum. Right. And the same thing with Larry. You know, originally there was, you know, he didn't know who it was, didn't hear it, and then it becomes Chris Bynum. So I feel comfortable, especially with the lack of any actual witnesses or physical evidence, saying, okay, it's unlikely that it was Chris Bynum. Larry said as much. That was they told him to say that. He didn't know it was Chris Bynum. So if we take that piece out of it and look at the consistent part of the story, then you do have this call, someone coming, an argument, and Liz being there. So that, I think, is probably the best way to connect those dots. And then, of course, we have the you know, if we believe the firearm examiner, which he hasn't given us a reason not to, there's some consistency between the bullets at both crime scenes that connect them. So yeah, that's what's made sense to me, is that it was that previous visit that created 3 witnesses, and they returned back to that house to eliminate the witnesses.
Yeah, I know Alyssa had asked some questions about the ballistics, and I've added it to the questions, but I also was like, oh, maybe we could direct Alyssa to also back to which episode you sort of talked more about that analysis. Because Alyssa's definitely asking about making those comparisons. They have bullets from 5 different victims, 2 crime scenes, as well as hopefully Chris's gun. So just to stop there, we don't have Chris's gun.
There's no evidence Chris ever owned a gun.
There potentially is no Chris's gun. So it just becomes about comparing the bullets between crime scenes or any other ballistic evidence that they could come up with. And if I recall correctly, although I can't remember which episode you kind of went over, and I know we've talked about it in past follow-ups a little bit. There was one bullet here, one bullet here, right? Were there more than one, or was it just like, because there was also a gun that it wasn't necessarily be able to be connected between the two sites.
Well, none of the bullets were ever compared to any gun.
Right.
So,
but just
so
to each other.
The state's evidence that Chris had a gun was because in his statement he said he had a gun, but there was no evidence. They were not able to ever find a single shred of evidence that he ever even owned one. The bullets, I don't remember exactly. I'd have to go back to the firearms episode, but there was a lot of vagueness in the description by the firearms examiner. Essentially said they're the same caliber. They have the same markers. The fact that they were fired from a revolver, and he claimed that there were, because of those markers, he was able to confidently say that some of the bullets that were recovered from the ball field were fired from the same gun. The ones he was able to get enough of evidence to get comparison on, there was enough of the bullet left over at the house crime scene. So we don't know what gun they came from, but he says they came from the same gun.
Got it. Yeah, this is a whole aside, but I know after the Delphi case, many of us were left with almost more questions than answers about ballistics study. And I think part of it, as a total and utter layperson, because I know that there is like anything, it's a tool, right? Like it could help explain. It can't be the only thing. But I always just wonder, like, you sort of, in my mind, I imagine what would seem fair would be like, every time you have a gun, and this is not in this case because we're talking about comparing bullets, but perhaps something similar. But like every time you have a gun and a bullet that's been fired, like that you shouldn't be able to just compare those two to each other, that you would have to have like something blind where you get 20 guns.
Yeah.
And then if you can identify that one gun could only have caused this, and you don't know who that gun belongs to, and then you can say like this tester tested 20 firearms or whatever the nominal number is or whatever, and they did it blind, and there's only one gun they could match it with, and that gun belongs to this suspect or this person who's on trial. That seems more compelling to me than, and again, I don't know what I'm talking about. It just seems more compelling than like we had someone that we thought did it, and we asked someone to try to match those two, and then they told us it was a match. That just makes, I think for me, it just makes me wonder, like, yeah, but couldn't it be a match to something else?
Well, and that's what always happens. And Delphi is the greatest example of that, right? They were insistent that it needed to be Richard Allen's gun, so they did that. So this was an unspent round, so they ejected some rounds, and they're like, "Oh, well, that didn't work. Let's try firing the rounds. Well, that didn't work. Let's try firing 10." And they just kept doing it until they found a way to say that it was his, that it had significant characteristics to match it.
Sufficient agreement.
Sufficient agreement. Thank you, Zach.
Yeah. And then it always ends up the same. The final question by the defense: is it possible that gun was fired from a different gun? Yes. And the jury doesn't give a shit because what they heard is that's his gun.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Christina's other question. Christina says, has Chris's legal team pursued forensic genetic genealogy to try to identify the unknown profile from the vaginal swabs? This is an incredibly powerful tool to identify DNA from individuals who do not have their profiles in CODIS.
No, they haven't, but that's because the two major profiles that were enough volume to be able to get a match on, they were both matched. Now the oral swab from Liz came back to Joseph Tidwell Jr. actually, Joseph Tidwell Jr. Now the one from Sheila, that would be useful because that one we don't know who it belongs to, and I assume that's probably not, sorry guys, brain fog, the one she's probably referring to. No, the thing is, again, I don't think they have access to that evidence. They know that the CODIS hit happened, they have those results, but that would have to be a motion before the court, and it would be argued by the prosecution, or hopefully would be joined by the prosecution to say, let's move forward and do that. So it would be a good path forward. But because of where we're at now, Chris has already had his bite at the apple, so to speak, as far as habeas corpus. So you got to have new compelling evidence. It just becomes increasingly more difficult to get testing like that done. And I don't know what they're doing right now. So perhaps that's something that they're trying to get done now. But it's certainly something that I would, I'll pass on that suggestion because I hadn't really thought about that either. But in that case, you have, like Christina said, we have a full DNA profile from somebody that was with Sheila that night. And it would be, it's like with Tidwell. Is he a suspect or is he just a lead? Is he a witness? Is he a suspect in the murder, or was he with her earlier that night and maybe could start shed some light on? No, I mean, she was alive when I saw her, but last I saw her, she was with fill in the blank.
Yeah, we have lots of, as you can imagine, lots of questions around Tidwell, both senior and junior. Let's start with.
Hold on one second. I
sure.
just want to.
Oh, yeah.
So the sample from Liz and the sample from Sheila do not match each other. Correct. So we have two samples from that ball field, and the one from Liz is the one that's attached to Tidwell.
Correct.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm lining this up for myself and for any of the
No,
listeners.
I think it's good. I think it's good to say that because it's complex. You said it from the very first episode before we even started the case. You warned us of how complex it was. Zach, I'm really glad that you did that because that is important to remember which sample came from whom, and what did match and what didn't.
And then nothing's ever been matched to the sample from Sheila.
The doorknob.
The doorknob has been matched to the sample from Sheila.
Correct. Yeah.
And then the sample. Okay.
Got it.
That's never been attached to anybody?
Not to a person. It was attached to that murder scene, the doorknob at that murder scene in 2010.
Okay, perfect.
So Sheila is one of the people. Sheila is the one who had contents in her stomach?
Yes.
Sheila is the one who we know did, as far as we know, was only hanging out with her friends and didn't have sexual encounters prior to leaving her friend's house with Liz.
Correct.
And we have a vaginal swab profile that matches a crime scene doorknob DNA profile.
Correct. And let's not forget Sheila, who was with her friend Michelle all day that day, was not out having sexual encounters with anyone, was found nude and murdered. Yeah.
And then Liz, the oral swab matched Tidwell. She had not eaten, so the timeline doesn't really help with that. And then there's also a vaginal swab that doesn't match anything. Is that right?
No, the only major profile from Liz was the one from
was the
her oral swab. Gotcha. There was vaginal swab done with her too, and there were some minor profiles, but I don't think those would be very useful, just given the fact that, according to Tasha, that she was performing sex work that night, and at the crime scene she was found with her pants, zipped up, buttoned, so I think a vaginal swab for her. Yeah. If we were able to identify those, they would still be useful in the fact that they could present a lead, but they would lead you back to probably, whoever maybe she was with earlier in the night before she went to Michelle's house. But that's why the oral swab is those two locations, as I said in the episode, are very significant, because in order for DNA from a sexual assault kit to be meaningful on Liz, given what she, her activities earlier that day, the oral swab is the place where you think it could be connected to the crime scene. And then the vaginal swab comes from Sheila, who we know was with Michelle all day. And I can't stress this enough, she was found nude at the scene. To try to pretend that a vaginal swab of her sexual assault kit for a woman found nude and murdered isn't relevant is insane.
Yeah.
No,
absolutely. Well, okay, so let's talk a little bit more about this. Nancy says, is there a way to know if Tidwell Sr., the cop, was ever partners or close friends with anyone on the investigation?
I don't know. What another thing that I'm going to do, I don't know if I'll get it, is to try to FOIA some personnel records. Remember I told you guys last week in the follow-up, this is getting to a tricky spot where I have a lot of investigative work to do that I don't know how I'm going to turn into podcast episodes along the way. So just warning, there may come a point here soon where we may shift out of this a little bit to where, I may, to be interviewing people or something, because I have this is a case that we haven't had one like this in a long time, where there is a lot of actual investigative work that needs to happen. That's not stuff that needs to happen and then be talked about on the podcast every week. So I'm trying to figure out how we're going to navigate that. But that's another one of those things, like finding the personnel, getting the personnel records from him and from Donald and from Moxley and from Dame, all these guys.
It kind of reminds me of Lenore Griffin a little bit.
Right.
Going all the way
very
back
much
to
so.
that. Okay, so I'm sure we won't have answers to some of this, but just to kind of get the, knowing that everyone's got their thinking caps on. Faith says, did the crimes that the officer's son was convicted of happen in or near Gary, or was it someplace outside the influence of his father?
It was in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. Ashley says, was the cop's son known to work, like hire sex workers or trade drugs for sex?
Don't know.
Some very similar question from two different Sarahs and a Marlena. I'm going to read Sarah's, Sarah G's. Do either of these men have any connection to any of the victims? Are either of these men African-American? Larry referenced seeing two black men. Did either of these men have a connection to a man named Chris at the time?
Both are African-American men, Tidwell and Rebel. Haven't again. I hate to keep saying like I don't know, and this is part of what I'm working on now. Like all this stuff came in, as I'm going through. Like I knew bits and pieces of this, but how my process works is I dig into each element as we're putting the episodes together. That's both to help the audience stay focused on what we're working at the time, but it's also that's my investigative process, is to focus on one element at a time. So that's where like I said, my head's kind of spinning right now for trying to balance production and investigation, because as I'm going through this, I'm like, oh, this is a lead, this is a solid lead. Like I need to reach out and try to talk to Tidwell. I need to reach out and try to talk to Frevel. I need to find out these personnel records. I need to find out if there's connections there between these guys and a man named Chris, or there's all this investigative work that needs to be done from this big pile of leads that just came, that I didn't discover them. They were discovered by previous defense investigators, but now that they're there, from what I've seen, that's as far as they've been taken. And so now I want to take all of that and take it to the next step, because the only way we're going to get Chris out of prison at this point feels to me like we're going to figure out who did this and prove it.
Right.
And I think that these are viable leads to take us in that direction.
For sure. And I also want to thank you for your professionalism and taking the responsibility of making sure to say more than once that the Tidwell profile should not lead someone like me, who definitely jumped to that conclusion, not conclusion, but deep suspicion based on where we've been with the activities and the lack of activity with this police force, that he could be totally innocent of these crimes and could just be a witness. That's absolutely true. It's just, I think, and I don't want to like slander someone, and people are innocent until proven guilty. So I think I was a little irresponsible with kind of just going to this place of like, well, there you go. There you go.
I have an advantage over you, and you'll catch up on Sunday. But as I told you guys a couple weeks ago, the next 3 episodes are going to be like the last 5 chapters of a psychological thriller novel, and that's because it's like you finish this episode and you're like, oh, I've got it figured out, and then you just wait till Sunday, and you're like, the fuck.
Like, yeah. Oh boy. Okay. Real quick in the chat, I see Sue just asked, how big is the Gary police force? That's a good question.
Sue in the chat just said she just Googled Gary, Indiana has 145 officers.
Thanks, thanks, Sue.
That was
asked and answered. Okay, cool. No, that's a great question. Thanks for looking that up. Hang on just a sec. Okay, so Veronica RV says, and I don't know where this information came from. I don't remember it coming up in an episode, so I'm just going to ask it. But Veronica says, is the Shanita from Joseph's family actually Shanita Walker, or do they coincidentally have the same first name? Sorry if I'm spelling her name wrong.
So it was when I was in the process, the prior investigators did to confirmed that Joseph Tidwell is, in fact, the Joseph Tidwell cop's son. We went through his personnel records and his dependents on his insurance form. Remember that part? And one
Yes.
of his daughters' name is Shanita.
Got it.
That's where that came from. I have no indication that that's the same Shanita. In fact, if I remember correctly, they're spelled differently. I believe Chris's Shanita is SHE, and I believe that Joseph Tidwell's daughter's name is SHA.
Okay. Garrett, your question has been mostly answered. Garrett's question was, this is where there's smoke, there's fire. Question was, Officer Tidwell ever investigated for any other crimes or corruption? So it sounds like you are trying
Working on
to
it.
get to know answers on that one if possible. Allison and Ashley had similar questions. I'll read Allison's. I would like to know more about the appeal. I am assuming the kits were tested in 2018 in preparation for the appeal. You said the results were thrown out. Was it Chris's own team who decided to disregard that information? Was it Chris's team that found the info about Tidwell being the son of a Gary, Indiana cop? Was any of this presented during the appeal? And if it was, can it still be used as new facts to defend Chris? Will you break down what happened during his appeal?
Yeah, so I haven't been through like the appeal rulings. I know that it was denied. So the appeal, I believe, was in 2020. So everything that I've shared with you in this episode came from the appeals filing by Chris's attorneys. So all of this has been used, and that's what I meant by like he had his bite at the apple, and it's infuriating. So they went into his post conviction proceeding saying, look, now we've tested these sexual assault kits. We have a direct hit on this Joseph Tidwell, who was the son of a Gary cop. We have another direct hit from this other crime scene. We have these fingerprints that we're asking to be run through APHIS that haven't been. All that stuff was part of the appeal. The DNA was the part that I think they thought, well, that's going to do it. And so it wasn't thrown out, and it wasn't Chris's team that didn't. They did use it, and it just wasn't enough. The judges still denied the appeal. Again, I haven't been through the appellate decisions yet to see exactly what the justifications were for that. From what I've been told, essentially the prosecution argued that Liz and Sheila were sex workers, with no evidence whatsoever that Sheila ever was a sex worker. And so they claim that the DNA from the sexual assault kits are irrelevant because they were known sex workers and they could have come from anybody that's not connected to the murder scene. And apparently the judges bought it. Because I don't know if it was a judge or a panel of judges, but the appeal was denied.
Yeah, just when you say stuff like that, it just kind of underlines the heartbreaking. There are many heartbreaking parts about this case, but the heartbreaking idea of like just throwing away people. Like, I've heard enough. Like, I don't care about the science. I've heard enough. They were sex workers, so I'm sure that they could have been anywhere at any time. Like, that just feels
gross. It's gross. But also keep in mind that Larry Brooks' affidavit, where he said that none of that stuff was true and that the Gary police officers told him what to say, and that he was told who Chris Bynum was at trial and told to identify him at trial. That was also part of this appeal. So all of that went before the judges, and the information you're going to hear on Sunday was part of the appeal. It's unbelievable that wasn't enough to at least order a new trial.
Well, that's why I'm sure saying we got to actually solve this.
Yeah,
because all the stuff that should have worked was not enough for them.
I would have thought now I know more than you guys do, but I would have thought with everything that they put forward in that appeal, if I was on that team as their investigator, I would be like, I'd be confident. Like, this is it. Like, they cannot deny this. I almost wonder if part of the problem is, and you'll hear some of this over this next couple of weeks, is if it was too much. So like there's like, and I don't just mean like too much, like there's too much volume, but there was like, so this week we have the evidence that there's this Joseph Tidwell is connected. And then there's also evidence that this person over here that's not connected to Tidwell, as far as we know, is connected. Then there's the information that come out Sunday that's completely disjointed from that stuff. So it's like everything is saying not Chris, not Chris, not Chris, but everything's not saying because it was this person, right?
Hmm.
It's kind of scattered in different directions. So I wonder if that was part of it.
I think that's totally possible. I mean, I think we've seen that happen with other cases, and that's also infuriating because what you're describing is a bad investigation. That's
Precisely.
why there would be so much pointing in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow, again, we've talked about it before. That's the thing. The fact that the investigation is horrible somehow upholds the conviction instead of doing what it should do. And it's insanity.
Agreed.
Well, that sort of answered Solomon's question, which was, well, I will say that Solomon wins for kind of fun, cheeky comment before he asks this question. He says, Bob, how good are you at playing spades? Because the way you held this ace up your sleeve, brother, I want you on my team. Nicely done. And then he did ask, what's the real life chances of this information getting Chris free? So we've just been talking about that. Solomon, wish it was a better answer, but the fight is still very much alive.
But look, I think that and again, it's not because I don't know. I'm not privy to knowing what else was done with all this. So maybe this all ends up being a dead end. But for me, like the investigator side of me is looking at this saying this is a hell of a starting spot. Like we went from just, there's no evidence it was Chris, it was somebody else, maybe shaky, maybe something, but we don't really know anything about that tip. You don't really have a solid direction to go. We can go, you're not going to find a witness from 25 years ago at the liquor store that can tell you who that, that's possible, but that's very difficult to do. And so now I'm looking at like, now we have names, like we have the name of a person who almost certainly was with the victim shortly before she was killed. That's a solid lead. And to be honest, the thing that I'm most confident about, which may seem a little bit strange, is I'm really confident about with Leon Frevel and making contact with him. And this is why. There is a possibility, and I haven't seen, I'm still trying to get a hold of the trial, or there wasn't a trial, he pled out, but the docket and the investigative file in that case. So his sentence for murder was pretty light. I think I want to say, what was it, like 30 years or 35 years I said he got in a plea deal, which that tells me the prosecution's case was weak. They were, if they were super confident, it would be maybe life instead of death penalty or something. I don't know if Indiana has a death penalty, but I think there's a good chance that he was wrongfully convicted. And the reason I'm super interested to speak with him is I don't know and almost suspect that he doesn't know. But I don't know if he knows that there was DNA on that doorknob that didn't belong to him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm hoping that if I can reach out to him and let him know, like, hey, did you know they found DNA on that doorknob and it was someone other than yours? That may open up a dialogue, because that could help him in an appeal if he knows about that. And so there, I'm just like, I'm imagining in this perfect world of circumstances and opening, because I've had luck with this before, talking to people who are in prison, that are able to open up, thinking in Sandy Melgar's case, Liz Rose and I made contact with Oscar, if you remember from season 6,
Mm-hmm.
who was in prison, who shared information. Then Liz took it even further and ended up like getting a computer from him and all this different stuff that happened. But in a perfect world, it's like, no, I can, I probably know who that was, or I was there, but I wasn't the one that shot him. It was someone, I don't know how that'll shake out, but it seems like a good jumping off point.
Mm-hmm.
You said in Tidwell, that's probably less likely, but is there a chance that if he's made clear that we don't think you killed her, but were you with her that night? If he, that maybe he can tell you, like, no, I was with her, at this liquor store, and then she got into the car with these guys in this kind of car, something like that. I don't know. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but these are solid investigative leads. I think I haven't been in a position in a case like this for a long time where I'm like, I can see how to solve this. I can see a path to solving this.
Mm.
But it's gonna, and everybody might just say piss off and not tell me anything, but who knows? But I see a path forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's all we have by way of questions. I say that like there weren't many. There were tons of really great questions, very thoughtful. Always appreciate that kind of engagement on the Facebook page.
Well, great. Well, if you guys were blown away by this episode, just hold on to your hats on Sunday. It's going to be also infuriating. It's also going to, for me, it's a WTF moment for sure, because connecting what we learned this week with what we were going to learn on Sunday is interesting too. But yeah, so make sure you tune in on Sunday. It's another banger, I think, and it's a little shorter, besides the fact that I was sick this week, but also just trying to put something out before Thanksgiving. And then we are taking a full week off. So remember, there will be no follow-up next week. There will be no main episode next Sunday. The next time we will meet is in the follow-up, the Friday after Black Friday. And we'll be recording that episode the Monday prior to that. So everybody, hope you enjoy your time with your family, if you're able to do that, however you celebrate, or hopefully at least you get a little bit of time off work this week. And we'll talk to you guys in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bob would be a fantastic spades player. Bye, guys.
All right, we can hit stop on our recordings.
Great.
All righty.
Oh, stop.
How you feeling? You held up, sounded normal as heck.
Doing all right. I was fading there at the end. I don't know if you noticed, I couldn't really string 2 sentences together.
I didn't notice, and I love noticing like that, stuff like that. So I can give you shit about it, but didn't notice.
But I'm feeling to the point where we're going to end this right now, and I'm going to bed.
Great. Go lay down. Love you.
Thanks, everybody. We can't wait to
better.
talk to you guys on YouTube 2 weeks from whenever. Bye.
Should have quit while you're ahead.
So
Eventually.
bye, streamers. I'm ending the stream.
Bye, everybody.